Avatar: The Last Airbender is my favorite show of all time. For me, watching it is like being wrapped in a warm, comfy blanket, and I've seen it all the way through more times than I can even recall. In my opinion, it is a nearly perfect show from start to finish, with incredible characters, character development, story, storytelling, and world building. It contains some absolutely striking visuals and is full of cinematic moments and fight scenes. And while I could sit here and gush for hours about Zuko's character arc, or complain about how pissed off I am that Zuko got Iroh as an uncle, and all I got was my Uncle Leroy who pawned off my car for fentanyl money and brought a lot lizard to my 8th birthday party, this video is going to be focusing not on the perfect side of nearly perfect, but instead on the nearly side. As much as I love this show, so much so that I'm spending my precious time off from my job at Chuck E. Cheese to record and edit this video talking about how much I hate it, there's always been one aspect of it which I cannot reconcile in my brain, and that almost ruins what would otherwise be the greatest ending to a TV show of all time. That aspect being the Avatar state. It is simply too overpowered to create any tension in the final fight of the show, thus trivializing the goal of mastering all 4 bending elements, and it negates the journey, growth, and development that Team Avatar went through in mastering those 4 bending elements. Now you might be asking yourself, what makes me qualified to make these accusations? While it is true that I can't read, I don't know what I'm talking about, and I've actually never seen the show, I assure you I am as qualified as anybody. So let's jump in and I'll put it in terms that even you guys can understand. So first off is the balance issue. In video game terms, the Avatar state is busted and the devs need to patch it. The Avatar state waxed Ozai in the final and it wasn't even particularly close. The Fire Lord stood literally no chance. But I guess it was just the Fire Lord though, right? It's not like he was stated over and over and over again throughout the entire run of the show to be the most powerful bender in the world or anything.
Even if I did defeat Ozai, and I don't know that I could.
I'm like a big growing snowball of nerves.
Of course you are. That's because you gotta fight the Fire Lord, the baddest man on the planet. And you better win or we're all done for.
And even if he was, who cares? It's not like he was experiencing the most powerful bending enhancement that any bender in existence could possibly experience.
So the comet made them stronger?
Yes, stronger than you could even imagine. Sozan's comet is almost upon us, and on that day it will endow us with the strength and power of 100 suns. No bender will stand a chance against us.
This is the year Sozan's comet returns to grant us its power!
Oh. Wait. I think I'm saying the exact opposite of what happened. Can we cut that? The most powerful bender in the world with Sozan's comet was ragdolled like he was nothing. How is there supposed to be any tension for any battle in the show when Aang possesses that kind of power? The show isn't entirely ignorant of this limitation either. It attempts to address it in 2 ways, both of which fail. The first way to address it was with Season 2, Episode 1, the Avatar State. So in this episode, Aang runs across a general who tells Team Avatar that Aang is ready to defeat the Fire Lord. So for context, this comes off the heel of Aang going into the Avatar State at the end of Season 1, and literally laying waste to the largest fleet of ships of the largest and most technologically advanced army in the world, like they were mere playthings for little babies. He created literal tsunamis with his fingers. And so because the general has eyes and a brain, he recognizes the Fire Lord might have some issues contending with fucking Poseidon over here, so he comes up with a plan. His plan, and this is complex, so bear with me here, okay, is to get Aang into the Avatar state and have him fist fuck the Fire Lord into next Tuesday. Now in the episode, an explanation for why this won't work is provided. Roku explains to Aang that the Avatar state is a defense mechanism designed to protect the Avatar by instilling them with all the knowledge and power of the past Avatars. And then Team Avatar explains to the general that Aang doesn't know how to get into the Avatar state, much less how to control it once he is in it. So this is all well and good and makes total sense at that point. Key phrase to take note of here is "at that point," because later in Season 2 we find out that everything Aang said was actually just completely fucking wrong, that he's an idiot and a loser and a crybaby, and that he has no friends. Because, as it is explained to Aang, there's an easy way to control the Avatar state, and it just involves talking to this guru.
Hello, I am Guru Patik.
In the episode The Guru, Aang learns that he just needs to unlock his chakras, and that once he does that, he can go into the Avatar state at will and control it once he is in there. This entirely negates all of the arguments that were levied against the general in the episode The Avatar State. When you can go into the Avatar State at will, it is no longer a defense mechanism. Sure, the general was over the top and willing to do anything, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he was entirely wrong. There was a sort of method to his madness, at least at the beginning. He knew that to defeat the Fire Lord, they just needed to get Aang into the Avatar state, so he experimented with different methods. All of that is entirely logical. The issue was that once it was clear that there was no good method known at the time, he didn't stop. But his thesis on its own was in fact correct, and had he known about this random-ass guru who made no efforts to make this information regarding mastering the Avatar state known to anyone prior to the end of Season 2, the general would have just told Aang to go see the guru, unlock his chakras, and defeat the Fire Lord in 5 seconds. Imagine Ozai with no Sozin's Comet. It would have gotten absolutely deleted. Really? In the Winter Solstice Part 2, Roku should have just told Aang to go see this guru at the Air Temple and learn to master the Avatar state and defeat the Fire Lord on day 1. Could have just skipped the entire show from the beginning. I mean, why not? And by Aang only defeating the Fire Lord when in the Avatar state and failing when using regular bending, it confirms all of this. All he really needed was the Avatar state. So sorry Katara and Toph and Sokka and Zuko and everyone else who sacrificed literally everything in their lives to help Aang master the elements. You're all just a bunch of bozos who wasted your time. The one nerf that the Avatar state does have, if you can call it that, is that if the Avatar dies while in the Avatar state, it will kill the Avatar permanently. But how could they possibly die in that state when they're so overpowered? Yes, Aang lost at the end of Season 2, but that was only because he just sat there hovering forever doing nothing. So sure, the Avatar can be vulnerable in the Avatar state if they decide to act like a total fucking moron, but considering they have all the wisdom of the past 86 trillion avatars, I doubt this will happen very much. A side note, but it's established in the show and in the episode The Avatar State, that the Avatar will enter the Avatar State when they are greatly upset by something, like when the general pretends to kill Katara, or when Aang finds Gyatso, or when Appa gets stolen. My question is this, does this have an age limit? Can the Avatar enter the state right from birth? Now they don't tell Aang about him being the Avatar until he is 12, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he doesn't have the power yet. And telling him at 12 is shown to be entirely arbitrary, because typically the Avatar is told of their identity at 16. And at both 12 and 16, the Avatar would begin training, and would presumably already have all of the natural abilities necessary, including the Avatar state. What I'm essentially getting at here is whether or not 2-month-old Aang could have entered the Avatar state when he is fussy or loses his favorite toy or something like that. And if so, I have no doubt in my mind that the Avatar state is so OP that little 2-month-old Aang could have wiped the floor with Ozai if he entered the Avatar state after losing his pacifier or something like that. But I digress. So the second way in which the show attempted to address the issue of the Avatar state was through Aang's blocked chakra. However, this wasn't a remedy so much as it was the writers desperately trying to right themselves out of the mess they created for themselves. So they say in Season 3 that Aang has one of his chakras blocked, and can therefore not enter into the Avatar state anymore. This was so clearly in there to artificially create tension for the final fight that would not have been there had he fully mastered the Avatar state, because to that point, it had already been made painfully obvious that the Avatar state would have just nuked Ozai off the face of the planet. This whole plot element just shows that the Avatar state was so overpowered that the creators had to come up with an excuse to remove it from the vast majority of the season, and take it out of play for the beginning of the Ozai fight to make Aang seem at least marginally vulnerable. And by far the biggest issue with this is that there was a bit of a misunderstanding with my employers at Chuck E. Cheese, and I was forced to take a bit of a sabbatical. As such, with cash being as tight as it is with great pride that I announced my partnership with Raid Shadow Legends. Raid Shadow Legends is one of the biggest mobile RPGs out there, and it's totally free to play on both mobile and PC. In Raid, you can collect over 700 unique champions, all with their own skill trees, But even more egregious than the Avatar state being blatantly overpowered is how it negates the entire journey of Team Avatar. The central purpose throughout the 3 seasons of the show is that Aang needs to master all 4 bending disciplines and defeat the Fire Lord before the arrival of Sozin's Comet. It's laid out to him by Roku in the Winter Solstice Part 2, and from there on out, that was the entire motivation for our main characters. Season 1, they had to spend the entirety heading to the Northern Water Tribe for Aang to learn waterbending. Season 2 is predominantly about Aang looking for an earthbending master and then mastering earthbending. And then Season 3 is about Aang looking for a firebending master and eventually learning firebending. And before you argue with me about the Bossing Say arc and the invasion, the literal fucking seasons are called Water, Earth, and Fire. So let's just settle down, okay? It's mostly about him learning bending, so I don't want to hear about it. Throughout the seasons, we see Aang grow and learn and develop as a character. As his bending improves, so does he. For example, he first attempts to learn firebending in Season 1, but it backfires, and he burns Katara.
I told you we shouldn't mess around with this! Look what you did! You burned my sister!
From there, he learns restraint, which he applies to his bending in Season 3 when he's training with Zuko. He grows as his bending mastery grows, and he hones his craft to become more mature and more powerful, all in the service of defeating Fire Lord Ozai. Enter the Avatar state. All that great stuff I just mentioned, the Avatar state shoves it into a locker and steals its lunch money. First of all, the Avatar state isn't Aang. It is a spiritual entity comprised of 1,000 other beings we have no reason to care about at all. Closer to a demigod than it is to Aang. I couldn't be more bored or less engaged whenever the Avatar state kicks in and wipes the floor with everyone. It's not the character that I've watched develop and that I've grown to care about. It's like having watched countless Hikaru Nakamura streams, seeing him continue to develop his game, then rooting for him to beat Magnus Carlsen in tournament, only to have Stockfish take over the game each time he gets into a losing position. We haven't watched the Avatar state grow and change. It was as it was and always will be right from the start of the show, yet it is ultimately the one that saves the day season after season, not Aang. And as such, it destroys any sort of satisfying payoff to the growth we have seen our main character undergo over the course of the show. Aang was as powerful as he needed to be to defeat the Fire Lord in episode 1 of season 1. Everything that came after with Aang's bending journey, the struggles, the failures, the triumphs, and the friendships, were all entirely unnecessary and ultimately for naught, insofar as it came to achieving the main goal of defeating the Fire Lord. Because in the finale, he tries fighting the Fire Lord with just his bending, the bending that he had practiced for the entire show up to that point, and he loses. It was not until a moment of sheer luck, where he's pushed into a rock and his avatar spirit is reconnected with the past avatars, that he is able to defeat the Fire Lord. I want to reiterate this point because I find it so fucking offensive. The entire boss of the entire show that all 3 seasons had led up to wasn't defeated by Aang, but by this demigod entity. Yes, there was the emotional conflict with Aang having to find a way to defeat the Fire Lord without killing him, and that was ultimately solved by the Aang we know and love, but that whole plot wasn't brought up until the episode right before the finale, and was resolved by an ability that the creators pulled out of their asses in the literal finale of the show. It is in no way a satisfying resolution to the arc established with the Winter Solstice Part 2 and carried throughout the rest of the show. And to be honest, it wasn't even a satisfying resolution to the dilemma of Aang having to kill the Fire Lord. And they kept reverting to the Avatar State trope over and over again. Every single season had to end with Aang going into it and just wrecking someone. It would have been much more satisfying thematically if each ending of this season had in some way to do with the bending that he had been mastering throughout the season. Yeah, I suppose he used water in the ending of season 1, but that doesn't mean that it had anything to do with his training with Pakku or Katara. In episode 2, The Avatar Returns, he created a massive tidal wave while in the Avatar state. That was in episode fucking 2. He was 5 seconds out of the iceberg at that point and hadn't developed for shit. So if he could do it at that point, him doing it at the end of the season in the Avatar state doesn't mean that it has anything to do with any kind of development that had gone on throughout the rest of the season. This is why the ending of season 2 is by far my favorite in the entire show. It subverted the Avatar state equals win trope. Aang was vulnerable. He was human and it was his character being dragged out at the end, defeated, not some entity. Now, before jumping into what I think the show should have done instead, I want to really quickly address one thing that I can already hear people commenting in regard to Aang going to the Guru and mastering the Avatar state during Season 1, Episode 1. I can just hear it right now. Someone saying, well, actually, Aang had to go through a spiritual journey to become mature enough to master the Avatar state, and only by mastering the bending elements could he do that. That is entirely false. Aang mastered the Avatar state at the end of Season 2 without having learned hardly any firebending, or having actually worked through any of the issues the Guru was preaching about, particularly about giving up Katara. He gave her up, but it was so clearly forced and faked.
The only way is to let her go.
I'm sorry, Katara.
And is it even required to actually mean it? He clearly mastered the Avatar state at some point, yet ended up marrying Katara and having 3 kids with her. So I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say he didn't truly emotionally give her up. And I don't even know what the Guru is talking about. Every Avatar before this seemed to have had a life partner and they all mastered the Avatar state just fine. Kuruk was so attached to his love that he went to the spirit world just to throw hands with a demon after it stole his lover's face.
Why did he or I try to kill you?
Oh, it was something about stealing the face of someone you loved.
So yeah, I don't think he was too emotionally detached from his love either. Where did this Guru even learn any of this? I like to see his credentials. What's his badge number? Now, in my opinion, I think the ending should have gone one of 2 ways. The first is a bit more complex. You remove mastering the Avatar state. Have it stay only as a defense mechanism that can't be entered into at will, and therefore Aang would still have good reason to master the bending elements, and there would still be tension for the final fight, without having to artificially nerf him with some bullshit plot element about his chakras being blocked. This way, when he defeats the Fire Lord at the end, he's doing it with just using his bending, thus justifying everything he went through to get to that point. Now I will admit, this solution is also not perfect. It certainly nerfs the Avatar, but as Iroh once said,
Is the combination of the 4 elements in one person that makes the Avatar so powerful.
the Avatar will still be powerful enough to maintain balance because he has the ability to master all 4 elements. The biggest flaw of this idea to me is that it would have altered the ending of Season 2, which I think is perfect. There is certainly a way to keep the spirit of that ending intact without having the Avatar state mastering aspects, but you are still talking about some relatively major changes to the script for Season 2 into Season 3. So, this brings me to Option 2. Option 2 will have everything be the exact same except right before the Ozai fight. Now, I see Option 2 as having an Option A and an Option B. Option 2A is simpler and is just that Aang doesn't get knocked into the rock and unlock his chakra, and therefore defeats Ozai normally with just his bending, thus having tension and justifying his journey to get to that point. Option 2B is more complex, but even more satisfying in my opinion, and it is that prior to the Ozai fight, Aang succeeds in unlocking his chakra and goes into the Avatar state, but Ozai is able to knock him out of the Avatar state or prevent him from going in somehow. Now how you go about that, I'm not exactly sure. One idea I had is that you can explain that Zhao brought back some info from the Great Library that revealed a way for a firebender who's enhanced with Sozin's Comet to prevent the Avatar from going into the Avatar state, but regardless, just come up with some excuse for why he can't come in. And once he is knocked out of the Avatar state, he has to rally back and rely on his bending and defeat the Fire Lord with just his standard bending. This removes the artificial nerf of the block chakra and truly creates a story whereby our hero could not have succeeded under any circumstance without having gone on the journey of the show to that point. Additionally, it is our hero, through his own skill and development, who defeats the Fire Lord, not the demigod. It's the best of both worlds. As is, I love the show regardless, but part of me does truly feel somewhat hollow watching Aang on his journey, because in my heart of hearts, I know that it's all somewhat meaningless, and that it won't be him saving the day, but the entity who lies deep inside. But who knows, maybe I'm just a cynical asshole who can't appreciate that the real purpose of the show was the friends we made along the way.